Greetings.
Should I put a little more growl into it?
Okay, I came back to, we spent 48 hours making puppets.
Making and breaking hearts, Ellinger.
It's not that kind of podcast.
On a practical level, I have to remember what I was saying on a practical level.
We should have a safe word. Armageddon!
I guess we're maybe semi-proud of that.
Welcome to Hide and Create, your online writing workshop.
Welcome back to Hide and Create, your favorite writing podcast. You know it is. Now with aliens.
Aliens, new and improved.
Yes. Josh is having some strange alien sounds in his apartment, and we can't figure out what they are. So
It's
if I
pretty
disappear
amazing.
suddenly from the recording, I have been abducted.
okay,
Think fondly of me and pray for no anal probes.
yeah, just squeeze those cheeks real hard, dude.
So with me today in the alien encounter, Moses Siregar, Joshua Essoe, who may or may not be abducted by aliens, and Jordan Ellinger. And today we're going to talk about the dark side, how to tap the dark side, to infuse it in your writing, or infuse your writing with the darkness, how to project yourself onto experiences that may not be all you, or that you don't want to admit are you. So what basically, I listened to a talk given by Erica Spindler, who's a thriller author, and she talked about reaching into the dark side of an incident or personality. And it was like, okay, so say there's an incident where you're driving along and there's a road rage incident. So you can discuss, you can easily describe, chasing the guy down, flipping him off, cussing him out. But she said, no, go darker. What's a darker thing that could happen? What's the worst, most vile thing that could happen in this moment? And it was really interesting because it made us all stop and think, ooh, yeah, dare to go into that super dark place where we don't usually go. What's the worst, most vile thing that this person could do right now? So, Joshua, tell us about your dark side.
Ambush.
You like that?
Okay, well, there's one thing, because of the road rage thing, that reminded me of. I've had road rage. Well, I've had mild, baby road rage, but I've had serious road rage once. And that was right here at the corner of the streets that my building sits on. I was in a rush to get my wife to school after we'd just spent a really nice night and really romantic dinner. When there's the aliens coming.
It's got to be a joke being played on you by Joey or something. She's hidden something around the
I
apartment.
don't know what it could be. So we'd just gotten back from this really nice evening spent on a yacht, right? Super awesome. And now I'm rushing to get her to school early in the morning. And we come to our corner here, and against the red, this beeply beeply bleep starts crossing the street, looking at us like, what you gonna do? Making us wait. Like, he walked so slowly and was glaring at us like we were the jerks. It made me so insane. I started honking at him like all of the jerks that I hate when they honk. They just lay on the horn and they won't let go. Right? I did that. I was that jerk right then.
So that's the worst you did? Is that you just honked? What did you want to do?
If Joey hadn't been there, I'd have jumped out of the car and started pounding on him.
Okay, but
I was that angry because I had my hand on the door handle, and Joey grabbed my arm and said, "Don't do that." I'm like, I really want to. And so I'm honking at the guy. So the guy really literally did. I think that is like a buzzer on me now. It's like calling false, and it's not false. He slammed his hand on the front of my car. It's like bang, and glared at me, pointed at me, and flipped me off. And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's it. This guy's going down." So that's when Joey grabbed my arm, and I was able to turn to her. Seething red fire flames burning and crisping in my face, and I didn't get out of the car. I let the guy go. But what would I have done? Remember Jack Nicholson with the golf clubs? Way worse than that. He hit every single nerve in my body in that moment. And later, I look back at that and I go, "Wow, that was a big overreaction." Maybe Maybe I shouldn't have reacted that way, but
that's the thing. I mean, we all have control, generally personal controls. If you got out, you'd maybe beaten him up or something like that. You most likely, I would hope that you would not just find out who he is and hunt him down and, kill him and his family and the people who owe his family money and stuff like that, right? That's probably not your style.
Not his whole family. Just torture them a little bit in front of him, right?
Okay, but see, that's what I'm saying. It's interesting to take some of these experiences and go, how dark can it get? How dark could it get? And then you could get into that for story ideas and stuff like that.
Alien anal probes.
How dark could it get?
I think that's a wonderful exercise, Dan. Thank you for sharing that. Next time I'm in line at the bank or something, I'm going to be like, what is the worst thing that could happen in this situation?
Right.
And then once I think of the worst thing, I'm going to say, what is the worst thing that happens in this other situation? Right?
And it's interesting to see how much worse can you get, because he's like, oh, okay, I would have gotten out and punched the guy. Really? That's it? You could go a lot darker with that.
Joshua, I can't even imagine him angry. He's just one of the nicest guys.
Yeah, I have to say, the Southern California, because you're in LA right now, right, Josh?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I've always heard about road rage down there, and then recently we were on vacation down there, and we were driving from LA to San Diego, big city to big city. You would think the highways would allow people to drive from big city to big city, where there is nothing there. For so long, you're looking at just dirt and the ocean, right? And so we're just, middle of the day on a Saturday or something, and there's so much traffic on a freaking highway. I didn't see an accident. It was just traffic. It was just one of those things where cars would slow down, and because that car slowed down, the other car slowed down. And I'm like, oh my God, I totally get Southern California road rage now. If I had a gun under my seat, I would just be shooting it in the air, if not at a person. It was just maddening. So, so I kind of understand where you're coming from on that one.
You don't know how many times I've wished for go-go gadget wheels on my car.
You know what? Speaking of that was a great exercise for me. I don't have a super dark side. My mind doesn't go to those places for whatever reason. My dark side is depression. I've dealt with depression, and it runs in my family. And so, what I try to channel that into my work, right? So I, will write kind of devastating things that happen to my character and how they deal with it, probably in an effort to teach myself how to deal with situations.
Yeah, basically, it's like a role play, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, exactly. You want to write dark, you think, well, another thing that you can do, when I get very depressed, I listen to Alice in Chains, right? And just to give you a very brief story about Alice in Chains, Lane Staley, their lead singer, was addicted to heroin, and he got his high school girlfriend, he reconnected with his high school girlfriend, got her addicted, and then she died. And they came back to do that made him spiral into addiction even worse. They came back to do a reunion record, and he wore gloves up to his elbows because his arms were rotting. And the reason I listen to that is because I think to myself, however bad my life is, that guy's got it worse, right? And so I channel that into my fiction sometimes, and I write these situations where the protagonist, the main character, has it just way worse than me, right? And I'm like, wow, I'm glad I'm not this character, and that helps me deal with depression a little bit.
Okay, so basically, you're kind of taking painful moments from your life and projecting them out and dealing with them that way, or just
sure, even if
are you intentionally dealing with them? Yeah, are you intentionally dealing with issues, or just using what you have to make more interesting characters and interesting situations?
A little from column A, a little from column B. Sometimes there's situations drawn from my life that I try to work through in fiction, and then other times they're just like, wow, I want to hurt something because, whatever, I'm depressed, so this is what I'm going to do to you, this imaginary character. So now your life sucks and mine is better than that. Yeah, exactly. So,
Moses, what's your dark side?
I don't
evil
really
laughter.
I don't know. I'm kind of like Jordan. I don't like to think of myself as a dark side kind of guy. So I don't know. I think you you write about things. You can't not write about yourself. You can't not write from your own life, and your life influences you. And I think there is so much to explore if just from your own life experience. There's so much that you can pull from to write about. And actually, you're going to do that whether you do it consciously or not, just because you have to.
I agree, yes.
David Morrell, I remember him talking about how the first books people write are generally like therapy books. Like, you're going to just start dumping out all these things that come from your life, your dark side, and it's going to come out. I think there's probably no way around that. And it's interesting to look at it and realize that that's what you're doing, and then just try to milk it, as much as you possibly can, because you're going to do it anyway. Live it up, really, really get into it. And writing is therapy for us. I think dealing with difficult things that have happened to us emotionally, it's always hard to do that, just in your waking life. But when you write and you really dig into that stuff and you really get into it, it is therapy for you. That's one of the reasons why we're probably addicted to this stuff, because we all need the therapy. But that's what you do. It's what you have to do. And I can think of many scenes where I've been writing a scene and I realize, oh, wait a minute, that reminds me of something that happened to me. Like, I'll give you an example. There's this scene in the first chapter of the Black Gods War where you have this 9 or 10-year-old, and her father, she gets a brother, and it's her first time having a sibling, and she sees the father look at the brother with this incredible love, and she realizes, like, wow, the father likes that child more than me. And it just reminded me of something that happened to me when my stepfather, when he had his first child, who was my sister, and I saw the way that he looked at her, and it was like, wow, that's different than how he looks at me. And that was on the page, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. I can relate to that. And then you go into it. You try to go back to that emotion. You try to go back to that feeling. You try to relive it.
Yeah, because if it stuck with you all these years, then it's a really pivotal, cool emotion that will hopefully stick with your readers as well.
Yeah, and so that is kind of the added benefit of being a writer, is you get free therapy. You get this stuff out of you because you have poison in you, you have toxic stuff in you that it something that hurt you, something that was painful, and it's inside of you. And until it comes out in some way, until you become aware of it and accept it in some way, it's going to be this emotional poison inside of you, and you get to get this stuff out, and it actually is really good for you.
Well, it is very cathartic. It's just talking about stuff sometimes. That's a lot of what therapists do sometimes. You're just having the chance to talk about things, and it's kind of a safe way to talk about the stuff without actually making a direct confrontation with whoever your tormentor was or that sort of thing.
It's funny. There's actually a term called Tuckerization. Are we all familiar with it? So Tuckerization basically comes from the name Wilson Tucker. He was a science fiction and fantasy writer back in the day, and also an editor. And he would use his friends' names for minor characters in stories, and then often terrible things would happen to them. Especially people he didn't like, or whatever. It'd be like, so he would rip their characters, get ripped apart, and so you can do that. As long as you don't use the characters' names, if somebody annoys you in real life, you can put that person into a story. Don't use their name unless it's like in fun. Like the protagonist of Ritual of Fire, one of my novels, was a good friend of mine, a writing friend of mine, Scott Baker. That's the name of the character. But, you can have a lot of fun. And some bully that tormented you in high school, well, they're in your book now, and they get eaten by a slug, Done.
Yeah.
But careful not to Marty Stew or...
Yeah, sure. I mean, and don't get sued, right? So, you can use their name.
Don't get Marty sued.
Yeah, there you go. You can use their name and just don't make it too close. You'll know that that's really, John Jerkface from high school. But
John Jerkface? That was my best guy.
Sorry. Anyways, yeah.
Diana, tell me if you do this. I find that a lot of zombie writers do. When you are in a new surrounding, or just any surrounding, say you're after a movie, it's nighttime, and you're walking into the parking structure, are you always checking out your surroundings going, if zombies came, I could probably live through this?
Okay, well, I used to be a cop, so, I have a lot of habits. and it's been pointed out to me that I check my area like a cop. When I walk into a room or when I'm walking with a group of people. I was out walking to a restaurant with a group of women in Kansas City at Romantic Times Convention this past year, and it was not the greatest area, and it's this pack of about 6 women, and we're walking through at night, and so I fell to the back, and I pulled a pen out of my purse because I didn't have any other weapon, and I kept watch. And one of the other women looked back and go, "Yeah, you're the cop." but yeah, it's kind of a general, kind of a constant. What's the worst that can happen? Kind of thing. Okay, yeah, if the zombies come, what would I do? If the gang of muggers comes, what would I do? That sort of stuff. But I think that's shaped more by my years as police officer than general being a zombie writer, because my zombies are nice. So.
My zombies are very, very not nice. and I'd say that me doing that is definitely as a result of the zombie writing and the zombie thinking, the zombie pondering.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's natural to look at stuff and go, okay, if this happened, okay, how many people when they walk into a bank, if you go, whoever goes into a bank anymore, but when you go into the bank, how many people go, okay, if it was robbed right now, what would I do? We all do it.
Who's disposable?
Yeah, it's like, okay, what would I do? I would do this, I would do that, I would hide behind this guy. That's what I would do. We all go through these scenarios. And so as a writer, you just take that and kind of pump it up a few notches. Mm-hmm. So... Okay, so going on
into that.
no, I'm not done with y'all. Okay, so we did deviate a little bit from my original intent, but it worked. We mentioned there was a mention in the last show about the scene in Game of Thrones where Brad gets pushed out the window. And I think that's a perfect example of, you get to the scenario, okay, spoilers abound here, but y'all should have read the book by now. You got this kid who's caught these two banging away who really shouldn't be banging away. What's the worst that can happen? And the worst that can happen to this adorable kid who likes climbing is that, yeah, he gets thrown out a window and he can't climb anymore. And we talked earlier about how brilliant a writer George Martin is, and I think that's a good example. He took that moment and... what's the worst that can happen? This. In that moment, that worst thing, that spoke to the character of the two people tremendously about what was at stake for them and how they reacted to it, and the fact that the man did that terrible worst thing. Do y'all have any, can y'all think of examples in other literature or movies or something like that? Where it's like, whoa, I can't believe that happened.
I think Dexter has a lot of moments like that.
Yes, I agree. Anything in thrillers, yeah.
Or Breaking Bad for sure. Yeah, definitely it does.
I cannot remember a more satisfying television experience than watching the season 4 finale. I think that's something that you see now, right? I've been interested in the evolution of fiction. I guess as everybody is, and all of us are. Sorry. People often get famous by pushing the boundaries of what happens, right? Like Quentin Tarantino got famous by doing Reservoir Dogs and, to a lesser extent, True Romance, which were both, ultra violent for the time, right? Guys laying in pools of blood, getting shot in the stomach, civilians getting killed, etc. Eli Roth, who did Hostel and Cabin Fever.
Oh God, yeah,
both horror movies. Those were just disgusting torture porn, right? So,
but that's a really good point. They're pushing that boundary of what's the
exactly.
That worst thing. It's awesome, and that's how people notice them. It's like, whoa, I never thought you could go that far. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and I think
show me more.
Exactly, and I think that's happening in all realms of fiction now, right? Is that people are exploring that, right? So this has laid the groundwork for Martin's Game of Thrones, although Game of Thrones, I guess, is a 13-year-old series right now, so maybe it was the opposite, right?
Or that, yeah, it came out in 96. Yeah.
Okay, well, there you go. So maybe that helped lay the groundwork, but whatever, you have this push towards kind of reality and what's the worst that could happen, and so I really like your example. I really am sorry I'm coming back to that, Diana, of being in a situation and thinking what's the worst that could happen, and then what's the worst that could happen from that situation. I'm going to go into restaurants and think, whoa, what's the worst that could happen here?
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's really cool. I this is another topic. I mean, it could even be another show, but all these dark side all these writers pushing the boundaries of the dark side. Oh, I'll do something darker. Oh, no, I'll do something dark. I'll just, and yes, there's a hunger for that. There's a craving for that. People are attracted to that. Like, and like, at what point is that? What point do you say, I don't want to participate in that? Like,
the human centipede. The human centipede.
I don't want to write the next darkest thing ever. I mean,
it doesn't have to be dark. You can use the same exercise in other directions also. Okay, what's the strangest thing that could happen? What's the most adorable thing that can happen? It's the whole point. Most adorable.
Care Bears and gummy bears. Purple unicorns.
No, but I think Moses has a good point. Like, thematically for me is that The Human Centipede is just an awful movie. Look it up on Wikipedia. But for me, like, I don't want to live in a world where that is a popular, compelling movie, right? So, the world I want to live in is, Quentin Tarantino's world. Eli Roth is pushing it a little bit too much for me, right? So I think, there is this danger to go, to write ultra gritty. But, eventually you have to ask yourself, what kind of world do you want to live in? Do you want to live in a world where this ultra gritty torture porn is popular and accepted? And
well, okay, you can also take the thing, what again, going back to George Martin, he doesn't really do, like, gross, horrible, dark human centipede stuff, but he does stuff that's very unexpected. It's like, okay, so what is the worst thing that happened here? That's going to surprise the hell out of the readers, yet they'll still want to keep reading because, wow, if he did this, what happens next? Okay, people kept reading after that person got their head chopped off.
It's a sense of jeopardy, right? Like,
it's like, okay, wow, no one is safe. I must keep reading. You get attached to your characters, and you're kind of on the edge of your seat the whole time. I have actually the mother of one of my child's classmates. I recently got hooked on the Game of Thrones series, and which surprised me. She just did not seem like the type to read it. And obviously I tragically misjudged her. But about halfway through the first book, I saw her at a swim team practice, said, "Oh my God, he pushed him out the window." I'm like, "Oh yes, you're in." and she's bought the rest of the series now because she's on the edge of her seat. It was like, "Oh, I hope that Daenerys doesn't die and what's happened to Arya?" I'm like, "Oh, just keep reading. And it's exciting to see her getting so into it. But one thing I think that George Martin's done, though, with that is readers are now willing to accept that in other fiction. Okay, so George did this unthinkable thing of killing off a main character. So it's okay now for other writers to do stuff about that daring as well.
It's interesting. I've tried to make a foray into comics recently, right? And I've thought a lot about comics, and I often think that the minute you as a reader kind of come to the realization that the hero is never in any jeopardy because they have to continue making the comic, is the minute you kind of lose interest in comics and go on to other media, right? So, there is that realization. I had that realization when it came to Superman. And then later on, of course, you guys know I like Superman. Later on, it came to the realization that with Superman in particular, the jeopardy is never been on him, and they're upfront with that. It's on who else in the comic will die, right? But Martin's really successful, I think, because you realize that everybody's in play, right? Yeah. There's nobody that's safe, right? Yeah.
It does make me sad, though, the fact that you can go darker, you can push those boundaries, and generally that's where there's a lot of audience. There's generally a hungry market for that, and I don't know. It's just, for me, it's a sad thing about human nature that. I'm not talking about what Martin does. I absolutely see the place for what he does and the types of stories that he writes, but just in general, like the dark side stuff, like I don't know, it's depressing. Like when the shooting happened at the Batman movie, that was like a moment where I really kind of stopped and thought about this a lot. I was like, wow, like
desensitizing. You think it would be basically kind of being desensitized to it? To make it easier.
I think we do. Yeah, I think you get desensitized to things. The darker things get, the more desensitized you get. Yeah, certainly. But I don't know. I really had a moment when that shooting had happened where I was like, wow, okay, yeah, the Batman movies, they're cool. I love them. There's some dark stuff elements to them, and then look what it kind of attracted. Like with the shooting, and like man, like who knows, like how that guy was influenced by the Joker or whatever. I'm like, man, can I write? Do I want to write something that's going to make someone want to emulate a sick person? And for me, the answer is no. I don't want to write something to make someone who is dark cool. And yet, there's a good market for that. I just don't want to do it.
I think we're probably about ready for closing dark thoughts. Joshua, closing dark thoughts. Or not dark, it depends on where you want to go. It could be adorable.
Okay, final thought. Am I Joshua Essoe? Or am I really a pod replacement of him? And tell me, what would you do? What will you do?
Well, we can just hang up the call and we're done with you. I mean, that's pretty easy. Just saying. You live pretty far from me, so.
No, if I'm a pod, I'm obviously of alien origin. That means I've got a spaceship, Diana. You can't get away.
But you know what? You've actually been more entertaining than the other Joshua.
Burn.
Burn.
Okay, your turn.
Jordan, what you got?
Well, you know what? I think what you have to realize is that what you're writing is fiction, right? These characters are not real in any sense. So you can do whatever you want to them, but like Moses says, the people that are reading it are real people, and you're acting on them in a fashion, and you're influencing them, like we talked about in our last show. So, you know, I think Martin walks that very careful line between realizing that his characters are fictional, they're not real, he can do whatever he wants to them, but also that he has responsibility to his readers, and I think that's one of the things that makes him so compelling.
I agree. Moses, what you got?
I can't think of anything. I just keep thinking about Joshua and like the pod and the spaceship and the anal probes and stuff. And I just like my brain just
Going darker and darker.
Yeah, I got nothing.
All right. Well, we were in a bit of time crunch, and apparently the aliens have been taking Josh. So I'm glad that they were able to contribute so well. We'll see you all next week, and thank you for joining us.
This has been another episode of Hide and Create. The show is produced by me, Jordan Ellinger. The site is edited by Joshua Essoe, and your co-hosts have been Diana Rowland and Moses Siregar. That music that you're listening to was written by Jason Donnelly. We can be reached at writingpodcastonline.com, where you can ask us questions and suggest topics for future shows. Thank you for listening. Now go hide and create some.